Um, all right, and Dallas, do you want to take it over?
Yes, yes. Good morning, everybody. My name is Delis Alejandro. If I haven't met you, I recognize many faces here. I'm going to introduce one of them in particular, but uh, but I work at St. Monica Catholic Community. But I'm also gladly to be the chair of the Faith Committee of the Coalition. And today we're going to be exploring a topic that a lot of our members have talked about. You know, a lot of our communities are very good-hearted, wanting to help people in need. Today, I think we're going to explore some of the questions that people have brought up, though, some of the congregations, in regards to are there insurance, maybe legal things, but particularly insurance issues that come up when helping folks in need. And before I go any further, I just want to introduce the Director of Operations of St. Monica's, and that's Felipe Sanchez. I asked him to join us this morning. He oversees all operations over here at St. Monica. So hi, Felipe. I'm glad you came on.
Hi, and it's nice to.
I've been gone. I was on retreat last week, so I literally just sent him this note. So I'm glad he's on.
Yeah, but I've got a 9:30, so unfortunately I'll have to hop off and hop on again. But I'm glad that it's being recorded because I think this is such an important topic, and I want to learn as much as I can from all of you. Hopefully we can all work together.
Yes, we have a lot of these questions. So, you know, really, honestly, what we're going to do is hand it over to Darcy, who is the executive director of the West Side Coalition. And she actually has been doing a lot of the work, getting together this team who's going to be here to help answer some of our questions. So let's hand it over to Darcy. Thank you, Darcy.
Thank you so much, Dallas. Really appreciate it. Well, this is exciting. You know, we are this whole situation has its roots back before we ever even moved to California. We have had a church in Tempe, Arizona, and we assisted in. There was a mobile shelter there. We did heat respite. We did a lot with the homeless, and there was one gentleman that had decided to take up residency in our dumpster area. And he had already been injured by a dumpster, like a garbage truck. And he had pins in his legs, into the bones of his legs. It was terrible. And our insurance representative drove by and saw him, drove by several days and realized that he was living there, and called us up and said, if he doesn't move, we cancel you today. And it was the first that we knew. And, you know, that was so extreme. And I don't think that there would be many, you know, companies that would go to that extreme. But that was one of the things that then trying to manage risks to the organization, what that means, you know, from the perspective of an insurance, you know, your insurance company is the one that assesses risks. So we've got two amazing people here. I initially went to Jennifer Bond because she's the representative for Mount Olive. And I had worked with her prior because of a grant we have with the Department of Mental Health. And we, you know, so I knew her. And then also we wanted to have a couple of perspectives. And so I had a friend that knew Maureen and introduced us. So, you know, this is a really, really important topic. And we want to give you the opportunity to ask questions specific to what you're experiencing. And we also want to give you, you know, when we get through, we don't want, you know, faith organizations or community organizations to stop serving people. You know, we want to talk about what are the ways that you can help? What would you be able to do to best protect everyone? So I am going to turn it over to Jennifer. And Jennifer, it's all you.
Well, thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer Bond. I'm with Nancy Bond Insurance Services. We're located in Monrovia, so a couple cities away from Pasadena, here in the foothills. And our agency, Nancy is my mom, and we've been in business for 25 years. And I've worked for her for 23. And we serve solely nonprofit organizations and religious organizations in Southern California. Some other Western states too, but mostly here in specifically greater LA area. And so having a little bit of experience of the balance between knowing what the insurance industry requires of how we upkeep our property and care for it, and what your needs are, and trying to find that balance and how to communicate about it, trying to get some action steps. It feels quite restrictive sometimes when an insurance company would say, you know, you can't do this, and trying to interpret how to take what they're communicating about their requirements for you to get a policy and keep it, and what the reality is in your organizations. And so, you know, the insurance companies, they all are in business, and they need to, it's really, to the companies, it's about affordability and being able to pay for claims. And it's about the money, so to speak. So, you know, when they're talking about, we will pay to repair or replace your property, or we will defend you in court if there's an injury, that they think about them paying out those amounts at the time you have a claim. So their focus is to make sure that they can protect you if there is that situation, and you have insurance for that reason, for that protection and that peace of mind in the meantime until you have the claim. So we're sitting here thinking, how do we operate in our spaces and still be able to meet everybody's needs in the neighborhood and be welcoming and have open doors, and to be able to still do what our missions are and our focus is to care for the community. And so this is the hard part, is to talk about what the insurance companies want with all that in mind. And their goal is to make sure that they are charging enough premium for what your exposures are, you know. And if they learn that there are folks that are sleeping on your campus, whether you know about it or you don't, it is something that they see as a higher risk, that is going to bring them closer to a situation where they may have to pay out a claim, because statistically there are injuries and there might be violence, or a situation you wouldn't intend to have happen. So the insurance world wants to say, you know, the more you can control your campus and keep people safe on it for everybody, the better. And so having a formalized program and having a plan, and then, you know, posting, they really would be talking about to not allow folks to sleep on campus, to make an action plan to help place people and find nonprofits to pair with, which I know is so hard on the West Side specifically, because I've heard that there are no such shelters or systems in place that can take all of the folks that have these needs. And so, you know, I will note too, and Darcy, feel free to stop me if there are any questions or anyone needs any clarification. I'm just putting it all out there.
Yeah, and I would say, if you have questions, put them in the chat, and I'll watch for that. Thank you.
Oh, perfect. So just thinking about, you know, as a faith organization, what are the things that you can do? I mean, trying to keep your insurance policy and following what your insurance companies and what your agents are communicating that your companies require of you, and then also being able to still meet the needs. And, you know, we were just thinking about, and I will say, different denominations and different faith organizations will have different rules about this. Specifically, that maybe you are of a Christian faith and your denomination is the carrier of your insurance. If that is the case, then you may have different rules that apply. There are so many different ways to approach this. Specifically the Evangelical Lutheran Churches Association, ELCA. They don't require that you have a certain company. They endorse one, but you are, as a church, allowed to go and purchase insurance wherever you please. In that situation, then it's up to you to talk to your own broker and company about what's going on in your community to make sure that they know what your exposures are, what the risk is, so that they can cover you properly or help you try to figure out a way to mitigate all of those exposures, so to speak. These are insurance terms, exposure and risk. And so check with your leadership or your headquarters, your denomination, in the ELCA, which is the majority of our congregations that we serve. Our religious organizations are mostly ELCA. In that sense, they, forgive me, my train of thought was just blocked. Thinking about the insurance companies that insure churches specifically, they would say to not allow people to sleep on campus. And if you do have some sort of formalized situation where you do allow it, or maybe you have a shelter on site, you'd want to make sure that you talk to them about it, because the church specific insurance companies or the religious or faith organization in specific insurance companies, they may not want or be able to insure that at all. And in that case, you may need to sort of create a separate organization entirely, maybe create a separate nonprofit that you're involved with that can operate that on your campus, or have, partner with other nonprofits to create some other shelter yourselves.
And that's what Mount Olive did with the Students for Students shelter, also the Bruin shelter. That was a lot of, they worked very closely with the city of Santa Monica to get everything up and running in a very, very top of the line way for that, understanding the insurance and understanding what the city needed. And so they're in compliance, but, it took a bit to get there. I see that there's a question from Nancy that says, if a church is allowing individuals to sleep in classrooms, would you recommend this to be reported to the insurance company? And would that be in writing?
You would need to tell your insurance company. I would first start by calling your agent. Call your insurance agent and talk about it. It is important to let them know everything that you are doing. And so making sure that you're all on the same page, and then they would be able to give advice and then set up an insurance program that can fit what you want to do. They may make recommendations to do something a little bit different. Maybe in order to get insured, you need to do, this kind of thing, set up a system for it. If a church is allowing individuals to sleep in classrooms, is it something where, are there any controls in place? Is this a system where you are doing background checks to make sure that that there's nobody on campus that could, that has harmed somebody in the past that you don't know about? What are the systems in place to make sure that you are keeping everybody safe? The in writing part, they may require, I would start with a phone call, and they may require something in writing. So that's the approach with that one. Maureen, do you have any feedback on that too? I want to make sure that we tap you in. I'm not taking the whole floor.
Yeah, I did check with a couple of my carriers who write both churches and social service organizations. The first question was, well, what do the loss runs look like? It's not that they wouldn't consider the exposure, but you'd have to rate for it. So churches are normally rated on square footage for liability, but then you'd want to break out the section that's like a shelter. But they'd also want to know that you have social, you need some supervision. You can't just open the door and let people come in and like stay there the night. You have to have staff. It comes with a pretty good expense. Hopefully be providing some kind of social service, although that's not completely necessary. But there's things you would have to consider to keep it safe. And, you know, it's just kind of how that rolls. So again, depending on who you're insured with, as Jennifer said, great idea to call your broker. See if, like, for example, you know, Hartford Rights churches, they will never consider a social service exposure.
Right.
But Philadelphia might, Great American might, if you're directly with Church Mutual, because they have a proprietary program, they do write social service, potentially forming a second entity, you know, talking to your attorney and having that second entity run the shelter, giving a certificate of insurance and indemnification to the church, that might work. And, you know, we've got all sorts of, you know, take a nonprofit helping the unhoused, and Nonprofits Insurance Alliance is all over it. They just don't write religious institutions. So you do have some options, but they come with expense.
And Maureen, since you're talking here, we never properly introduced you.
Okay.
Can you introduce yourself?
Sure.
A little bit
So-
about who you are and where you're from.
I'm Maureen Bernstein. I fell into insurance in college and stayed there. When I got my license in the latter part of the 1980s, I literally cut my teeth insuring nonprofits in Skid Row.
Oh,
The
wow.
agency I worked for was very politically connected. We insured the redevelopment agency when it existed. When they were handing out money to start all these nonprofits, they showed up at our doorstep. Everybody far more senior said, ew, homeless. And I went, oh, cool, social service. I did get a degree in social work. So I literally have been insuring nonprofits my entire career. I'm a broker with Newfront. I'm also a principal. We're based out of San Francisco, but we have offices in multiple states. We're licensed in all 50. And we're a pretty good sized operation. We have about 800 and some odd employees. Nonprofits is one of our special practice areas, which I work with. I'm a resource to quite a few of our brokers when stuff comes up and they have questions. And, you know, I've enjoyed working with charitable organizations my whole career. And I always figured if I wanted to leave insurance, someone might hire.
And is your company called Newfront?
We're Newfront.
Okay. And Robin asked the question that Housing Mar Vista, that's who his organization, that they are building a capital fund, and their exposure is currently one afternoon a week in a feeding program, and they are looking for insurance. So maybe both of you he could get your contact information, or he put his there. Maybe you guys could call him about some of the questions. So you guys, Robin, you guys are looking for somebody to insure Housing Mar Vista?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
We're not a stationary organization, so I won't take people's time for this call. We simply appear one afternoon a week for 2 hours. But as we get more capital fund leading toward housing, we'll also have more exposure. So,
Are you a 501c3?
yes, we are.
Okay. Yeah, there's lots of options. You don't need to have a physical location to get insurance.
Wonderful.
Awesome. So did Jennifer, do you want to continue what you were saying when we kind of rushed in here and changed everything up?
Oh, no, it's all good. It's all good. I do have a couple things to add. If here's a question I've received quite often is, should I be posting signs? Is it okay to post, no trespassing signs, or smile, you're on camera signs? And that would be in the category of prevention. Be telling folks and making it be very clear that having, if somebody who's there and you don't know about it, or if it's overnight and no one's there, that is considered trespassing. And, then maybe adding a sign that says, we would love to help you, our office hours, or come visit us. offer an alternative to say, please come see us in the office at 8 a.m. or 10 a.m. Something like that. But if there is an insurance inspection, which Darcy, that's what you were sort of referring to, is that your insurance agent drove by and saw that on campus, saw the man staying there, and said, your insurance company, if they knew about it, you would be canceled right away. That insurance companies, they inspect your property, or want to, maybe sometimes every other year, every 5 years. And so if they go to your campus and see that there are signs posted, we want to make sure that we're saying no trespassing, or they're seeing maybe some like a motion sensor light or cameras, some sort of security, they'd want to make sure they see that you're in charge of your space and you're controlling it. And so those would be the signs that say, okay, we understand they're doing something to prevent. If on file, they're also seeing that there isn't a social service, maybe you haven't called them and talked to them about it. If they only see that there's, like Maureen was talking about, the pricing, the policy and rating for square feet, or rating you for your church operations, if they don't also see social services, then they may see the property features on your campus and think, wow, they're doing, they don't know that they're people, or they're not putting these safety features in place. And so they could, and so just to speak to what Darcy's agent was talking about, they could then cancel if they don't see that you've got those controls in place. So we want to make sure that you avoid that if you have insurance, you want to keep it, especially, and this is a big deal right now. If your organization owns your property, you want to keep your policy. The property insurance market, the insurance world, is having a terrible time with property insurance. And you may have heard on the personal insurance side, residential, maybe your own home or where you live, that State Farm has backed out of the marketplace and companies are restricting taking new applications, giving the consumers less choice, and it's making it be really hard for the personal insurance. That is trickling to commercial too. Commercial insurance companies, which is where your organizations are in the category of, there's personal lines, there's commercial lines. You're in the commercial area, and commercial insurance, property insurance, it's hard there too. State Farm says no more property insurance at all. So if your location is near a hillside, you may at a certain point find that it's going to be a totally different topic, but I want to just point out that you want to make sure that you get everything that you need to cover what you're doing and what you own, but you also need to maintain your insurance policies because it may become more restrictive in the future. If you don't see that affecting you this year, you may next year or the year after. Increases in pricing. It's going to result in less choice for your organizations. In the list of insurance companies that insure churches and nonprofits, with all the bells and whistles that we know that you need, like directors and officers and employment practices liability, all that whole package deal that you get from your insurance companies, that the list of those companies it's few. There are very few of them. You think about, like Maureen was saying, the Hartford and there's Liberty Mutual and Nationwide. There are insurance companies that will insure property, just basic general liability, but they don't throw in what, say, Church Mutual would include. Clergy professional is another thing that a lot of the other companies don't do. So the church-specific insurance companies that give you the really good coverage, that's what you want to keep. You want to make sure, so just thinking about if you are having an inspection and there's something they want you to do, work with them to try and make sure you maintain that policy.
Awesome. Here is the real rub, is that, it used to be that from the time that a person experiencing homelessness was engaged and got a caseworker, until they got the right intervention. That might be housing, it might be employment, it might be, getting their mental health addressed, whatever it was. That would be about 3 months. Now that is well beyond a year. And so there is such an influx of people, so many people right now that are on our streets, and the encampments are extremely dangerous. And they look at faith and small nonprofits as a safe place to go. And so they're going to these properties, not asking to camp there. They're just camping there because they're desperate to get out of the encampments. What in the world can we do to help with this situation so that we can give them, of course we need to get them to the right agency. We need to get them connected. But what do we do? This is the question. And Maureen, let's start with you, since you haven't had too much camera time.
A lot of it depends on, I guess, how much money you can raise to fund these things. I mean, volunteers are great, but you can't really count on that. So I don't know what everybody's budgets are like. For example, I belong to a synagogue. We have constant security. Our security bill is probably more than our clergy bill.
Yeah.
But that's for a whole bunch of other reasons. But like drive-by security at night, just to maybe you can all like come together and you hire a company, just drive by, make sure nobody's camping out in your parking lots. And the doors all still like they're, everything looks like it's locked up at night. That might be an option just on the immediate prevention where somebody's, cycling through the neighborhood. Again, until you kind of come up with a plan as to how you're going to effectively handle these exposures. I understand the wanting to help. It's a fabulous thing, but sometimes I live in Marina Del Rey. They just repaved Glencoe. We had vans like on the entire block. Well, they're coming back now. The paving's done. And, the city's not enforcing the no parking between 2 and 4 a.m. But so it's just, you kind of need to come up with a plan as to how each organization is going to individually handle it, how you can afford to handle it. Again, if you potentially form a separate nonprofit to deal with this issue, that might be a clean way to do it. If you're, I would consult your attorney. I know some wonderful nonprofit lawyers. If anybody needs a referral, you can reach out to me. But
I have a suggestion, actually. It just one in probably 1,000, different things that you could do potentially, is that there's an organization called Safe Parking, and they go to oftentimes faith organizations because they have large parking lots or some parking lots where a lot of places don't. And they bring on porta-johns, they have them cleaned on a regular basis. They bring on a security guard, and then that parking lot ends up, so they've got somebody watching, they take all the risk. And so that they show up after hours when you're gone, and they have all the cars out of the parking lot before you get there. So you never even cross paths with the people that are staying in your parking lot. It serves a huge purpose, doing good, and but yet it's not a risk to you. So those are the kinds of unique situations I think that we're looking for.
Is somebody supervising the parking lot all night to make sure no one's starting fires
Yes.
If there's needles laying on the ground?
Yes, they bring in their staff and they get them all connected. The staff are there, and then they go, hand it off to the security guard, and the security guard is there doing rounds all night long until the morning.
So again, you're letting a different organization come in. They give you a certificate of insurance, and
that's exactly right.
And that's again, that's sending it to somebody versus trying to do it yourself, which, you don't always have to reinvent the wheel.
Right, right.
Church, I'll add Church Mutual is an insurance company that will allow a church to have safe parking operations on its campus.
Mm.
Okay, that's good to know. Jess with Sophisa is asking, Maureen, please share nonprofit lawyers in.
I will. I got the.
Okay, so you guys got that handled. Perfect. Did I miss anything here?
Nancy Watson put in.
Oh, yes.
Maybe it's been answered somewhat.
Is that the one? How can the church be sure if it will be covered for any damages or injuries caused by persons allowed to sleep on the premises?
That's a follow-up because
You're getting a certificate of insurance from the agency that's now handling that.
Okay.
So you have your attorney work up an agreement and make them responsible. So if one of their people burns down your church, you're just going to subrogate. But you probably would have to rate out the parking lot as a lesser's risk, like a rental exposure, even though you're not, someone else is coming in there and renting the parking lot. The carrier would want to look at it and rate for it.
Okay, so good.
No, my question really was a follow-up to Jennifer Abon talking about, the church can call the agent, just talk to them and see what their suggestions are. But the thing is, the church may want to know that it's going to be covered when something happens if they have people sleeping overnight. And so that's why I was asking, do we need something in writing? Because an oral okay by an agent just saying, well, that sounds okay, it doesn't give much assurance.
You would receive an updated policy from your agent. So there would need to be a change made to your policy. So when you tell your agent, they would set up the policy. So your insurance company is going to review what you're telling your agent and rate for it and update your policy. So you'll get an updated policy document that reflects that.
Nancy and
That's
Jennifer,
how you know. Sorry.
it would seem that going to a larger entity would be a great way to handle it. One Catholic church standing alone is probably nothing compared to the insurance I would bet the Archdiocese of Los Angeles carries. And I'm speaking out of complete ignorance too, but to look to a larger entity might be advisable.
Mm-hmm.
And also, can you, a question, can you explain the phrase rate for it, the rate for it?
So when you have an insurance policy, especially on the liability section, you'll see like there's an exposure, there's a class code, and then there's a rate. So for example, there's a code for churches, you might have square footage, and that's how they figure it out. So if you now have a shelter, they're going to look at the square footage. They might rate it by number of beds, or there's different ways to rate things out, but that's how they get a premium. And most insurers, when they're admitted, they file their rates with the state of California, and they have to follow those. They can do some debits and credits, but there's some base stuff that they need to follow.
And another question, what about if the church itself wants to run the safe parking in their lot?
So you're going to look at, you've got some math, some exposures to review. You might, have a homeless shelter. You're going to have a homeless shelter, and they're going to look at the square footage, and it's not just going to be your parking lot anymore. It's going to be the fact that you're now running a shelter, and they'll charge you for it. And those are not inexpensive rates. And again, depending on your insurer, they may be willing or not willing to take on that exposure.
That's one of the benefits of signing up with safe parking, because they're taking all the risk.
Right.
So if you do it, then you have to take the risk, but it might help your organization somehow. But
your policies cover pretty much anything unless it's excluded. So when you look at property, unless they've thrown on extra exclusions, like you have what we call special form excluding earthquake and flood. So it's not like you would be excluded. They're not going to go like, oh, you have an encampment where it would be covered. They just might not be really happy if they didn't know about it.
So, and what are the normal exclusions?
Exclusions. Earthquake and flood are your big ones. It's more like what's included, you know, like wear and tear, you know, like infestations. Those things are typically not covered. But the things that are usually covered is fire, smoke, you know, God forbid an airplane, like when the airplane's, you know, an airplane dropping out of the sky onto your property is an insured peril. You know, an electrical fire, you might have limited water damage, but let's say, you know, your sprinklers all of a sudden leak. There, if you have fire sprinklers, that can be covered. You know, the backup of sewers and drains may or may not be, that can be limited.
What about injury? Somebody comes to your place and they fall while it's during office hours.
So that's third party liability. You know, you are responsible for your premises, even if people are trespassing.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to make sure, at least if people are walking on your property, that, you know, your parking lot surface is well maintained. You know, that's well lit, so people can see where they're going, because you don't want to create extra hazards.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what would you guys suggest for people that have folks that are camping on their property? What would you suggest they do?
And you have signs.
That's a loaded question. Go ahead, Melissa, I'm sorry.
Get them out of there. Yeah, I don't know if there's a way to close off. If you don't want them there, you know, maybe fencing your parking lot, closing it off somehow, having drive-by security that would ask them to leave if they're, you know, other than the normal signage. You know, signs mean, you know, sometimes a sign is a suggestion, not a mandate. So
what if you do want them there? I mean, or that you've compassionately said,
then I think
oh, this is a tough.
You need to have a conversation with your insurance broker and see if your carrier is willing to take that on. But you're going to have to show them that you're supervising it in some way and not just letting people there when no one's around.
Okay.
That's to formalize and have a system.
Right. That organization you mentioned, Darcy, sounds like a great solution.
Oh, say parking. Yeah. That's
I
like
mean, it gets
that you can...
They have insurance. I don't know if it costs the church anything, but
it doesn't. It doesn't. In fact, they pay you. They give you a monthly stipend to use your parking.
Sort of paying rent.
Basically, yeah. I mean, they give, it's minimal, but they give a monthly stipend.
And they're supervising these folks so they don't decide to, like, oh, we're freezing, let's build a campfire, and oops, we burned.
Right.
Very good point.
Right.
What the problem we ran into, because we tried to do that at our church and the community had a major hissy fit, and the city, they just said that they moved from the parking lot to the street, and then we have a school across the street. And so if the city's not enforcing the parking requirements, then it's hard to work with not just the insurance and the people, but also the city helping enforce what the laws are. If the laws aren't, then
they've given up. If you've seen the Bologna wetlands on Jefferson, where there's like, not, you know, it's a problem. Yet try double parking for 5 minutes, you'll get a ticket.
Right. So, if you have something to lose, but they have nothing to lose, so they just smile and go their own way.
Yeah, it really has become a dilemma for a lot of people. Those that are, you know, experiencing homelessness, those that are in those RVs, and for those that, I mean, I live very close to the Bologna wetlands, and it's heartbreaking. You know,
they're being destroyed because they're a state preserve.
Yeah, it is a protected preserve, and sewage is being dumped into it on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a mess. You know, there are things that are, you know, very unfortunate. Any other questions that you have, Melissa?
Yeah, I do have a question about the liability. So if we have an open campus, and there's no way it can't be open, it's just the way it's set up. It's the neighborhood park. And we don't have a security guard there. We do have lights. So you're suggesting it needs to say no trespassing at night or absolute or something like that. If it doesn't say that, the insurance could say, sorry.
Well, no, they won't necessarily say sorry, but you want to make yourself as not liable as possible. Like, I live near Chase Park. The park is closed at a certain hour.
Right.
Unless somebody is patrolling it, people can get in there. It's, you know, the reasonable, I mean, you do what you can. You can't necessarily fence things off.
Not
And even having a fence doesn't necessarily keep people out. You can just do your best.
And or absolutely no trespassing between such and such hours. I don't know.
Say that.
You have brought lots of questions to my mind now.
You can say it, and it never hurts to have that if you don't want people there at a certain time. But unless somebody's patrolling it and enforcing it, you can't stop people from going in.
That's right. And so then if they will say, break into the electric jack so that they can charge their phone.
Yep, that we have
hours.
All our cabinets where I live in the marina because folks were charging their phones.
And so they do some fun wiring and then it hot wires the building and the insurance company comes in and says what?
No, it's an electrical fire. It will be covered.
Thank you. Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So, you know, what it seems to me is that, you know, this is what we wanted to do, is show you what the risks are. You know, we're not trying to take a side. We're not trying to say, you know, get those people off your property. We're trying to say, you've got a lot of things that you've got to look at.
Right.
And you know, but we also recognize that we have to up our game. We have to know, where are the shelter beds? If people are camping here, where can you send somebody? How do you access them? The West Side doesn't have shelter. We don't even have the winter shelter anymore. And, you know, the people concerned, they do have a small number of shelter beds, but it's only for their clients. So it's not like a place that you could drop in or police could bring somebody to a shelter. So, you know, we have to rely on 211, you know, some of the resource guides that we have. But 211, even though it is difficult, and it is difficult to get in because they are overwhelmed with the number of calls they're getting, but they are paid by the county to have a list of where all the open beds are at any time. And so if you can sit with that person and get on the phone for them, because they're not going to have the battery life with their phones to be able to do it, get on the phone and find an option for them and maybe give them a bus pass to get to that shelter wherever it happens to be. You have done so much more than, you know, it just ends up being, you know, being able to know how to best serve people. And one of the things that I wanted to get in here before we end up closing, or before we have a lot of more questions, is that I've been working with LASA to get HMIS access. And what that is, it's the Homeless Management Information System. It's the joint system that all of the people that are in the system are, you know, it gives information. So when you have people that come to you and they say, well, I tried going to that place, but they won't help me. Or I tried that and they said that I can't do, you know, we are trying to get the coalition first, and you can call me, but we're advocating for faith and small community organizations to be able to get view-only HMIS access so that you can see, is this person connected to a caseworker? Is this person getting the things, you know, it will have the notes so that you have better information about how you can help them. And if they truly are not connected to anyone, you'll be able to see that. And
Mhm.
so it's one of the things that we are very much advocating for that would help the faith organizations immensely in assisting people in a way that is truly helpful. So there are what other questions do we have?
When will they have that?
What?
When will they have that access?
Well, I have gone through the application process, the interview process. They tell me there's no problem yet, but she said they're overwhelmed right now. So once I get it, we're advocating for all of you.
Thank you.
Be able to get that. And I think it's a game changer, honestly, for giving assistance to those that come to you.
Yes.
Marcy, another idea is possibly to develop a resource guide such as we have developed in Housing Mar Vista, which we had previously from Mar Vista Community Council. That's at least showing the intent, which could help at a litigious situation.
Yes.
The person, even a roving guard that comes by and attempts to bring some order, doesn't necessarily eject a person. So the compassion side of the churches has to be looked at. I don't expect the court system or the city to do that, but we can if we can influence our churches.
That's a great point, Robin. Really, really good point. So, this is the dilemma that we wanted to address. Faith organizations, the whole point of there being an organization is to help people that are in need. And so it's really hard to turn them away. It's, it goes against the reason why you have a synagogue, a temple, a church, an organization, nonprofit organization. So we're in the people helping business, and we've got to find the best way to get people connected. So I love your idea of the resource guide, having one. We have one that's online. I built it in Google Sheets because it's always changing. Everything changes and you have to reprint. And so, if you're not wanting to print it over and over and over, that's an option too, because we are, but that's hard for people that are on the, that are on the streets. So you can give that out to them if they need food resources, if they need medical, if they need mental health intervention, all of those things. I am not watching the questions very well. Jess, did you have a question? Jess, are you there? She may have stepped away from her computer. And so, Donna, yeah, please.
Yeah, this is some great information, and it's the pros and cons and the disadvantage of supporting the homeless and the mental health. Is there a way to connect with you, Nancy? Because I would like to know more about the HMIS access?
That was me. And so I can connect with you offline about what that is. Can you put your phone number or email address in the chat, and then I'll reach out to you after this.
Perfect. Thank you.
Absolutely. Anybody else? Well, we're going to close it down. So, ladies, can you make your final, thoughts as we kind of bring this to a conclusion? Maureen, do you want to go?
Sure. I guess anything you're going to do, talk to your insurance professional. We're here to help you. We're not gonna, I'm assuming aren't going to judge what you want to do. And especially if we're into insuring nonprofits, there's a whole social service side to that thing. But check so we can contact your insurance company, talk it over maybe with a different carrier, and keep surprises for birthdays. Just an easy thing. we don't know what we don't, if you don't tell us, we can't help you. So very important to have that conversation.
Very, very good. And Jennifer.
That is so true. It's exactly right. Communicate open and often with your insurance professionals. We always say there are, 3 different types of professionals that you need to have a good partnership with, and that's an attorney, an accountant, and an insurance agent. And so I would partner with all of them, and just but specifically for insurance, making sure that you're communicating about it, and that you know what your agent is specifically recommending for your particular situation.
Awesome. Awesome. Dallas, would you like to give us some final words?
You know what? Just to say, I think this is all, well, first of all, to thank our panel and to thank you, Darcy. Thank you all a lot. Great information, great things to think about. I was just going to add one little thing too, that sometimes you might do an action that goes across the street, and sometimes you might be liable for that as well. So I was going to add that, a lot of times people will take what happens at St. Monica, or they go and decide to do it across the way, and suddenly the congregation is in trouble. So I just want you to bear that in mind when you talk with your insurance person, because I think that's very key. One thing they did tell us from the Archdiocese of LA was to also look at the perimeter, what's around you, and what could also be affected because of actions you do, right? So, that's one of the reasons why, like at Thanksgiving, we don't. Now, it was different during COVID, but, and especially during the lockdown, but we don't necessarily let people take food off site. Because if that food goes bad and that person gets sick, you could be liable. I mean, I'm just saying there's also think about the after action, like when people leave your site and what could happen, because sometimes things could happen that way too. But I want to thank you all, because you really, I'm still here with lots of questions, and Felipe sent me some. So I'm sure some people here will be in contact with Jennifer and Maureen. Then I just want to thank everyone for the year. This was an extra session we put in. Thank you, Darcy, for bringing it to our attention, because a lot of our membership wanted to hear about it. I don't think we're going to come back together again till September. In the summer, some of us will be planning next year's agenda and topics. And so please, if you have any that your, faith organization is wanting us to look at, please get that information to us. I think if all goes well, we will start the year again with the resource fair in September. So, I mean, I'm just putting that out there. It'd be the first Wednesday of September at this point. So just be watching for Darcy's emails, the coalition emails, to give you more information. And if you want to be part of that, if you're a group here that wants to be part of that resource fair, as is giving out some of the resource information, make sure to let Darcy know during the summer. Otherwise, thank you, everyone. Thank again to the panel. Thank you, Darcy, for all your work during the year, and happy summer, everybody.
All right, you guys, thank you so much. It was wonderful to see your faces. Good information. Ladies, thank you for your expertise. And, this is not an easy topic at all, especially for this community, because of the dilemma of you can't just push out. You've got to help people, find a way to help them. So this was really, really difficult, and you guys did it brilliantly. So thank you so much for your help.
Thank you all.
All right, you guys, it's good to see you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. Darcy?